Hi, everyone. Welcome to this live Basecamp Office Hours. I'm Kimberly from the 37 Signals product team, joined by Ashley from customer support. Thanks for joining us today. Today, we're talking all about using Basecamp beyond business. So I know a lot of people think about Basecamp for managing work projects or clients at work. I know internally, many of us have our own Basecamp projects that are non-work related. So today we thought we'd dive into that and show you some of the ways Basecamp can be used outside of work. So this session is going to be recorded and will be right here at this link that you came to when you signed up. So first, before we get started, a couple of housekeeping notes. It looks like you guys have found the chat. Let us know where you're from. We always like it when people join us live and tell us that they're here, so we know we are not just talking to ourselves. And you'll also see a Q&A section. So right below that chat icon, there is a question mark icon. If you have questions that come up during this session, please post them there. Ashley and I will be looking and we'll field some of those questions throughout this session. And any that we don't get to during the session, we'll do some at the end and may need to follow up with some emails as well. We will spend just about 45 minutes together, maybe a little bit longer if we have a lot of questions. And then the last thing I want to jump into before I pass it along to Ashley is the poll. So you'll see an icon that looks like a little graph. See, some of you have already filled it out. Let us know if you use Basecamp for business, if you use Basecamp for personal, for both business and personal, or you don't use Basecamp at all. We just want to know who is in the audience with us. So if you guys will pop into that poll, let us know. That would be great. Ashley, turn it over to you. I think I stole one of your key points about recording, but I'll let you take your other points.
That's no problem. The recording, I will send it to every single person after this call. And if you had submitted a question that doesn't get answered, I will also make sure to answer that specific question for you. So ask away, even if we don't get to it. I swear we will get to it. And this is really going to be more specific to how to use Basecamp beyond business. Now, we have a lot of resources on how to actually use Basecamp for your work. So one of the key things there is our classes. We have regular intro to Basecamp classes. You can always find that at basecamp.com/classes, and I will paste the link.
And I've actually put that right below us. So there is a link to that classes page. If you click that, that'll take you there. Those are great classes for people who don't really use Basecamp at all and want to know a good bit about how all the tools work, the basics of using Basecamp.
Definitely. And then if you already use Basecamp and you have something very specific to talk about, or you're like, this situation I feel like I can get it done, but I have some questions, that is perfect. I'm happy to help with that. We have a couple of folks on the team who are ready to assist with any kind of Zoom call in that way. So if you feel like you need more specific help after the session, reach out to guides@basecamp.com and we'll put that on the screen as well. And I'll put it in the chat as well.
There we go. Perfect. And we have someone joining us today from the Basecamp community. Ashley, do you want to give us a little lowdown on what that Basecamp community is since you run it? And then we'll bring our special guest out.
Yeah, so the Basecamp community is another Basecamp account that we've repurposed and again shifted away from like true business work into a place where everyone with all these fantastic ideas and fantastic questions can ask each other how they would handle that situation. And there's so many like just top tier suggestions just across the board. I think that's the number one thing happening in there, but there's also the occasional sneak peek from the 37 Signals team. And a lot of great ways to communicate with each other. So the community is how we saw Jethro. We were like, my goodness, what have you posted? This is fantastic.
Absolutely. So we're going to bring Jethro out. As Ashley said, he was part of our community, and he actually posted kind of a best case scenario of how he uses Basecamp to manage his own family life. So let's bring him out. Jethro, thanks for joining us today. Before we have you share your screen and walk us through how you use Basecamp for your family, tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. I'm excited to be here and grateful for the opportunity to share something that I love. I used to be a school teacher. I was an English teacher, and that's where I started using Basecamp with my students. And that was all the way back in 2008, 2009, something like that. And I've just been using it ever since. And it's this thing that I keep tool that I keep coming back to and using again and again for all kinds of different things. And I basically try to think like, if I need to do something and there's a scope to it, then I put it in Basecamp. Otherwise, it lives in some other place until there is a real scope. So now I am a consultant full time. I coach school leaders and principals, and then I have a podcast company where I produce podcasts for other people. And the podcast stuff is what I use Basecamp for most today, and the family thing that we're going to talk about.
Perfect. Well, with that intro, let's go ahead. Jethro, why don't you share your screen with us and we'll walk through your family project. I know, just as a disclaimer, you've hidden some of the private things and made some of the things fake, so we're not sharing any private information, but it is a recreation of the account you actually use.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And as this is coming up, just want to share that what I did with this is I took all the private stuff and I just used AI to rewrite it all so that it's all similar to what was really there, but fake. And that was, I wanted to do it because I wanted to be able to show you everything and not feel like I couldn't show you everything that was there. So this is what my pinned projects look like. And I'm working on my doctorate right now. And so this is a project that I just have by myself where I'm just keeping track of things in there, my deadlines, when school breaks are, stuff like that. A place I know I can always go to find what classes I still have to take, all that kind of stuff. This production services is all the podcast production that I'm doing. And then I have a bunch of other little projects. And you can see I have this keeping up with the Joneses. This is the family stuff with all my family on it. And then I have individual projects for my kids here. And the one that we're going to talk about is this Katya personal plan, which is down here. My oldest daughter, Katya, has Down syndrome, and she just turned 18 this last year. And we realized that brought with it a ton of new stuff where she needed to be an adult and needed to figure that kind of stuff out. And we need to figure out what that was going to look like. And it just seemed incredibly overwhelming. And so we put it in here, and then it brought all this clarity to what we were doing. So this is what that project looks like. And if it's all right,
let me interrupt for a second. Can you go back? Because I want to show you have individual projects for each of your kids. If we can just go to that. And then it looks like it's you, your wife, and that child are the only people who have access to those projects. Is that a true statement?
Yep. So things that are specific to that kid. So Callie, she's a junior in high school. As she starts applying for college, we're starting to put AP test dates, SAT test dates, things like that into her personal project. Things that help remind her of what she needs to be doing. And we'll do that for the other kids. Like right now, they don't really care and they're not really interested because we do everything for them anyway. But as they're getting older, we're trying to help them see how to use some of these things a little bit better.
Perfect. And then the Katya plan is the one that has the most robust information because of her specific care. Perfect. Well, let's dive into that one. And maybe we start by you showing us which tools you're using that you've selected to use for this particular project.
Yeah. So the tools we chose, the message board, but we call it a log because it's a bunch of different logs for her specifically that sometimes is talking with SSI, sometimes it's talking with medical issues, sometimes it's something else. We just keep stuff in there, and I'll go into that in just a moment. Then we have to-dos, which are just things that need to happen. And if you'll notice, some things we don't need to start worrying about for another couple of years. And so we can put these long-term dates in there. We can also attach the file so that we have access to it there, and we know that it's going to be ready. Docs and communities on this one, or docs and files, excuse me. I read community right there. Docs and files, we just have the different documents. I'll go into those in a minute there. Schedule, where we just put all of her stuff. The card table, I'll talk about that a little bit more in a minute. And then email forwards, we use that just to send stuff in. So I have a bunch of emails that I've received in her personal one, but they don't transfer over, one, which is good. And two, I didn't want all that personal information because you can't go in and edit these like you can the docs and files. So I just put one in there as a little sample talking about this Basecamp so that this event so people could see it. So those are the tools that we use. Any questions or comments or anything you want to say about those?
No, I actually think that we are doing really good. If you want to just pop into maybe the log, do you want to start with that one?
Yeah, this one's a good one because the way that the message board is used in everything else I do is it's a place for us to gather around and talk about what is going on and have some conversations. But this is really a communication log, and in here, what we can do is we have different categories. So and the thing is, we only add categories and complexity as we need it. So the four main things that we're talking about is DDA, which is the Developmental Disability Administration here in the state of Washington, medical stuff. We have to keep track of her rent payments and Social Security income for someone who's disabled. And so we have a different category for each one of those. And then this just becomes a log for each one of those things. And then we can filter if we want to see, oh, what's everything that we've done with medical issues? Then we can note when there was a seizure, we can do a follow-up on the ER visit, and then we can talk about a doctor's appointment. And in this view, because I recreated this, they all say January 7th. But in reality, what this was is she had a medical event, a seizure in October, and then we had a follow-up in November, and then we had another doctor's appointment in December. And so those things, we can connect them to each other and relate them to each other by using references. So down here, you can say a reference to this message, and you can see where it is and what it's relating to. And then when you put the comments in, this one goes to her actual, this did come over from her personal project, so I'm not going to click on it, but it references that actual message in that other one, so you can see it. And what's really helpful about that is that when we're doing these things, either my wife took her to the follow-up, but I took her to the ER, and so we could have the information that we got from the doctor in those situations, which when we're not both there becomes really beneficial. So this really just becomes a communication log. Anything else you want to highlight on there?
Well, I just want to point out Jacob's comment. He didn't know about references. This is relatively new and we love it because it lets you connect different parts of a project all together and see anywhere else a to-do, a task, a message was referenced in another part of a project, which is super helpful. Jacob, I'm glad that we could show that to you. I will say, and Ashley, jump in, when Jethro walked us through this, we were like, I've never seen anyone use the message board like this. It is truly like a log documentation of everything that is happening with his daughter. They're just spinning up a new message board post for.
Definitely. And it is such a wise way to do things in for this particular situation, because oftentimes you might put something like this in the chat, like, here's just what happened, I got to communicate it quickly. But giving it the permanence of the message board post makes it significantly more searchable. And like these categories are also helping with, they're also a little bit of a hidden feature. It makes it way, way, way easier to then find the most relative information that you need. So I think it's a wonderful way.
Yeah. And because I can then search through everything, I can find it really easily also. So let me just show real quick how these references work and how I would use this in real life. So I click here that I called the claims specialist. And since we're done with the log for now, we're going to go to the docs and files. And here's Bob, the claims specialist's info, not real numbers, by the way. I can put a link to this here. And when I paste the link that I just copied from the message, it puts this information here, and I just click that, and you can see I have this the same thing linked to my other one. And because I'm signed in and this is my account, I can go to Katya's personal plan instead of the family project. And so when I look at this reference, I see the reference here that talked with Bob, but when I go back to my log and I called the claims specialist, I think this was the one, then I can see the reference down here that it says, here's his contact info, and I can jump over to his contact info really easily. So a couple things about the docs and files is there are, for example, her rental agreement and planned action notices and medical records. We can upload all of this stuff in here, And as far as I understand, Kimberly and Ashley, correct me if I'm wrong, but Basecamp's not HIPAA compliant. And so it's like a doctor and patient shouldn't use it. But
That's
for
correct.
me to communicate with my wife and my daughter, putting information in here is helpful. And so I just want to, use at your own risk with that kind of stuff. Pay attention to it. But me sharing with my wife and my daughter what's going on is beneficial. So when a person with a disability gets money from the government through SSI, they can also set up what's called an ABLE account, which is a savings fund specifically designed for people with disabilities that I didn't even know existed a year ago. And so almost a year ago, I put in a message saying, here's the ABLE account information. This is what you need to do when you get there. And this is how you need to set it all up. And then there's this gifting form that people can use to donate money to her fund, basically to her ABLE account. And so this in her actual account, I have this all filled out already with her information, with her account number. So I can just print this out and send it to grandpas, aunts, and uncles when they want to donate for her birthday or something. The best way to help her is to donate this directly to her ABLE account. And I don't have to go log into that website and find it every time. I just have it here saved with her information pre-filled out. And so these kind of long-term files that I have to come back to again and again are really beneficial to be able to save in here. One of the things that I started was doing a communication log in here. And I realized that that was a really tedious and annoying thing, and the messages worked out so much better. So I actually have this log in here, which became challenging and difficult to manage and keep track of, and just a ton of information that was just annoying to have in here and harder to understand. And so I moved all that to the message board. Any comments or questions about this?
No, I think that's great. Actually, let's go to the card table tool. I know you have that tool enabled in this project because I think it's interesting how you've used that versus to-dos.
Yeah. So in dealing with my daughter's life, things take a long time. And part of the challenge with using to-dos is that there's not like a specific end date of when things need to happen. And so we need to register for Parks and Recs in the summer, for example, but that is a process that takes a long time, and there's many, many steps to it. Most of the steps are not really worth putting into a to-do because a lot of them are not things that we have any control over. So we need to do certain things, but we know the things that we need to do. And so we use this to help us know what's going on. So apply for SSI. I put this in last year, right before she turned 18, knowing that it would take a while. And in fact, it took 6 months for that to actually be completed. So this is now done, but that's just one of those lingering things that's out there that needs to be taken care of. And so, so this update SSI with rent payments, we need to figure out what that looks like. And we don't know yet what the to-dos are that are associated with that. We've called and left messages, and we're just waiting on information now. And this happens a lot with my daughter in her life, that there are things that need to be done, and they're just kind of hanging out there. And it takes a long time for all these processes to happen. And that's a major benefit here, is a loose, fuzzy timetable kind of a thing.
And we always like to say internally, we think of to-dos as something that's either done or not done. Like it is very black and white, very straightforward. You've either done it or you haven't done it. Card table works great for something like this where there's a progression or there's multiple stages or you're waiting on someone else and want to document where it is in the process. So this is a great example of that.
Yeah. And like everything else, you can add references to it. You can add comments to it. So when you come into one of these, we can add that reference here also that I had before about calling a claims specialist. And you can add that as something that is, further defining this. I don't always do that, but it's nice to know that it's there and it's worthwhile.
Okay, let's jump to your to-dos because when we were going through this before, we noticed some to-dos that are multiple years in the future, which is a great example of how to-dos can be long projects for you. Tell us a little bit about how you use to-dos and then some of those due dates too.
Yeah. So the main thing with to-dos is we don't use these a ton because we have other things that we do to keep track of that. And it just doesn't always make sense to put it in here. But sometimes it does. And so, for example, we need to follow up with the endocrinologist. And so that doesn't have a due date because it can happen at any time. And at some point, it just needs to happen. So we have it in here as a way to remember to do it. But there are some certain things, especially with SSI, for example, where we have things that we have to complete by a certain age when Katya is that age. And so when she is 21, we'll have to complete these two forms at that point. But we don't have to complete those forms yet, and doesn't do us any good to complete them now. But we don't want to forget that they're going to need to happen when she turns 21. Another thing in here is that when she turns 21, she will age out of the K-12 public school system. And so there are things associated with that. Because I'm familiar with that system, I'm not as stressed about that. But these are things that if we miss the deadline for when she turns 18, then it's going to take like 6 more months or when she turns 21, that's going to take like 6 more months to do those things. And so if we get it done in a timely manner, then it's good. And so we have to put these dates in advance and know that they need to happen at that specific time.
Perfect.
I think it's just perfect for those kinds of things that they're kind of in like the ether of your brain space. Something else is a little bit more important that you have to get done this week. But having that written down in a communal space where communication is really clear, I think that just alleviates any of the stress of like, there's something that I'm forgetting and it's happening in 2027. You don't have to remember it now. There is a place that's going to be there until the end of the internet. So it's safe.
Yeah. Yep. And that is one of the reasons why we choose to use Basecamp for this kind of stuff is because even if Basecamp ends as a tool and they stop developing it, they've committed to supporting it forever, which I think is really amazing also. So that's one of the cultural things about 37 Signals that I really appreciate and makes me trust that I can put this kind of stuff in there and know that it's going to be supported.
As we continue, if you have any questions specific for Jethro about how he's organized his project, make sure to drop them in the question sections, that second little icon, and we'll get him to answer those before we go into some other examples. I think schedule is maybe the only thing that we didn't touch on here.
Yeah. So real quick, she has specific things on her schedule that are regular and repeating. We put them in here so that we can see what is going on and what she's got going there. We can also subscribe to this calendar in our other calendar so we can see what her specific stuff is. And right now we're pretty consistent with Institute swimming class and cooking class, and those are just her 3 main activities. But one that we just registered her for that we haven't put in yet is here in March, and it's a night at the theater, and so she's going to the theater on this date, and so we can just put night at the theater, and then obviously we just do the time, 6 to probably 8 p.m. And then we can just add that on, and then we know that that's coming up, and it'll propagate to all of our other calendars through the RSS feed for this specific calendar, which is also a really handy thing. And again, as she's becoming an adult, we want her to be involved in things that are not the family things. And so this is important for us to start developing a calendar for her and know what she's doing and not have it conflict or overlap with what we're doing as a family.
Amazing. Hey, Jethro, I'm going to have you answer Keith's question, which is just a reminder, what Basecamp feature are you using for the log?
Yeah, so the log is just messages, and so all I'm doing is coming in here and doing a new message, and that's it. That's pretty basic and simple. And if you wanted to have a separate message, you could have 2 messages tools in there, and call them different things and have them interact in different ways.
I understand why you were confused, because it is a way to use the message board that I've never seen before, and it's very innovative way to use it. So it's just a message board tool. You can rename it and repurpose it like love. Okay, Jethro, thank you for sharing that with us. I'm going to have you stop sharing your screen. Stick around, though, because we're going to have Ashley show us a project for personal use as well. She's picked some different tools, and so we're just going to walk that through as another example.
Yeah, my screen is to my right, so I'm going to be looking over here. So don't mind that. All right.
What are you using for your example, Ashley?
So something that my parents have purchased a property when I was a child, and now that I'm not a child, I have a lot more involvement in its care. And so this is kind of a flashback memory of using Basecamp, because I could not gather all the different details from the different threads of communication that had nothing to do with each other into one spot, unless I did it like this. So I had, at the time, had invited everyone who was relevant to the project. So here's a recreation of it. The basic situation is message board being used in a more typical message board way of like, these are the main things that we're talking about. There is a quick chat for another way to communicate. This one is more like, hey, I just heard from the tenant, kind of a situation, and something brief, and that doesn't really have a lot of consequence around that. So anything that's less formal goes into the chat, right? And then we have, I have two to-do tools. For me, a card table didn't feel quite right. Also, when I did this, literally card table did not exist. So it's a whole new world now. But what I do have here are hill charts. So when I click into the exterior work of the house that I'm planning on doing, the 3 main to-do lists that I'm focused on are an HVAC system prep, super fun. Some light landscaping for the tenant who wants to do hydroponics, and then some odds and ends. These are real, by the way. This is what really happened. And then on the interior, while there are fewer things to do, there's still plenty to figure out for the washer dryer replacement and plenty to figure out for the flooring. And some of these lists are grouped. I have created a section of the flooring situation where we're kind of plotting exactly what's going to happen. We're ideating, we're figuring things out. And that reflects kind of up top what's happening here. The hill chart breaks things into figuring things out and then making it happen. So no matter how many, if I check all of these off right now, then it changes nothing in the hill chart, because the hill chart is something that you can adjust manually and say, you know what, we nailed this. This is done. And it went great. And include any other details in here as you would anywhere else you type in a Basecamp. And then you save this update. So at a glance, and hopefully for your own like joy, you can see where things are and then love it when they're at the very end. So that's the broad scope there. But to kind of to support those to-dos, I have in docs and files, no, broken images. I have broken images, but they are of
we're going to imagine.
They were good ones too. They were of washer options. So, and these things I'm linking, imagine the thing, and then I'm linking to what that exact thing was, you know, and there's like maybe something brief here so that I can get my mind around like, all right, what are the options? They're not just like 3 random links in my phone and no one else has access to them. And instead they're in this like centralized location. And this also would have been different visually, but the flooring, you can see like a broad scape of, you know what, maybe that vinyl faux stone situation makes a lot of sense in Arizona, where the stone will match the color of the dirt that you'll bring into the entire house. So there are thoughts and questions to kind of approach there, and having a centralized location makes it really easy for me to then say, you know what, here are all of my washer options. And if I go to the interior and I go to check for energy efficiency, I can do something like this, or I can paste the link to say they're all here. So you have choices in how you want to present the information. I thought I would do both. And then if we skip on over to also washer related, there was a sale on one of those home improvement sites. And I noticed that the sale was done on the 29th. And so I wanted to make sure that no matter what we do, we at least know about this thing. So it's not just, you know, bubbling around in my mind, simmering as I'm like, driving a vehicle and not communicating this, it's actually somewhere. It's up against the tenant move-in date, and these like more specific deadlines are separate from my overall timeline of when this work needs to be done, right? We only have a certain amount of time between tenants where it makes sense to have a bunch of noise and dust kind of up everywhere. So even though this is a personal project, this is one way to set your things up so that you have that start and end date. So it's very clear to anyone who's on the project, and we'll get to who's on the project, where exactly we're working. So there aren't a whole lot of to-do dates anywhere in these lists because they kind of just have one broad general to-do list. What might be more specific is if I were to involve the best handyman I've ever known, Luke Williams, who is also real. And he's fantastic. And he is also very pen and paper. Let me look at my invoice book from 3 years ago to see what you need. Like he keeps track of things extremely well, but it's not digitally. So I had a question that was private to the team, which could just be you and your family member or you and someone else you're collaborating with. And then we bring Luke into this space after discussing it. And then once we have Luke in here, maybe we make a light announcement, one that the client, Luke, the roles are reversed, but one that the client can see so that I can really just clarify, you only really need to pay attention to my stuff, my assignments. You don't have to be in this all the time, every time. Just know at the end of the day, my stuff, my assignments will get you whatever you need. And for us, we can be a little bit more descriptive. When we start assigning things out to people, we can be a little bit more like, okay, well, I know this will show up on their my assignments page. So they're going to be handling, the kinds of things that we've got them listed out here. If anything, I need to add. If I need to add anything to this list, as you often will end up doing, it's not, again, something you're going to forget. So I think the main thread here is that there's always going to be a place, and you can set up a place that works best for you for the things so that things don't really escape from your to-do list and they make it somewhere that's communal and clear and everlasting.
Okay, Ashley, I'm going to jump in and answer a question kind of related to Jethro, but it's a kind of 37 signals question, so I know that you'll have answers. If Jethro were to leave 37 signals, would he not lose his personal projects once his company account was lost? So as Jethro mentioned, we have said we're maintaining our products through the end of the internet. The question is a valid one, but if he closes his account, wouldn't he lose that information?
Yeah. Definitely. If you say, you know what, I don't want to maintain this at all anymore, then there's a cancel option. And in that cancel option, we're very clear about there's no more access to the account. Like we will be able to reactivate it within 30 days. But then after that, the button truly does disappear and there's no way to get anything back afterwards. I've tried. So with that,
we do let you download everything. Or export everything.
That page goes over what you can do to make sure that you have your account data, because it is yours. We don't want it. We want you to be able to have that information. You'll get an HTML export, which just means that it'll look as close to this as possible. And then it'll make sure that you have a folder filled with all the literal files. So all the PNGs that should work, those would all be in a singular file too, or folder. So keep your stuff.
I saw a lot of chat about that, so we just wanted to clarify. Oh, yeah. Yes, you can export everything from Basecamp if you close your account. Okay, Ashley, anything to add on this before I jump into my project I've mocked up?
I think not. I tried to keep it as straightforward as possible because I knew who I was collaborating with and I knew that they would need it to be clear. So know that you can get more complicated than this and that you can also get even you can use Basecamp at a lighter place too.
Perfect. Well, if you'll stop sharing your screen, I will show you my project that I mocked up. So I did a project for a club. In this case, it is a triathlon club, but just know it could be any kind of club. It could be a book club. It could be your Mahjong club, any kind of club where you're trying to gather people all in one place to do things for fun together. So in this example, I've used a message board, schedule, automatic check-ins, the chat feature, resources, which is really docs and files. And then I've also created a door into another item. In this case, it was a podcast. So if I were setting this up as a triathlon club, the schedule would be super important. Again, book club, anything that is very date specific, the schedule is going to be a tool that you'll want to use. I've renamed this one team events and workouts. And you can see that I have swims and bikes and runs and track practices. Most of them are recurring events each week at a particular time. And what I love about this example for any kind of club is if you've been in a group, let's say it's a book club, where people are talking about one specific event, but you're not going to that event, a group text becomes very annoying because you're like, I'm not going. I don't care about who's bringing the cheese because I'm not even going to be there. So in this case, when you use something like Basecamp to set up dates, people can opt in to their coming to this event, which means they will stay connected to any conversations about that event. So for this example, I have a swim practice. These are the people who have opted in or have added themselves to this event. And then you can see the back and forth conversation about what items are needed. It could be the same thing for who's bringing the wine. Are we having Chardonnay or Merlot, etc., but all divided around events. So you can see this bubble is there's been 3 conversations about this particular event. That way people can opt out. Like if you're not going to something, you don't have to receive all the information about it. I've also created a message board where each person can do their welcome, a little bit about themselves. People can comment back. Just one running place where you can see who's in the club and information about them. Automatic check-ins, I think, would be really fun for something like this. And I kind of stole this from an internal project we have, just a fun project called All Fitness that we have in our 37 Signals channel, where we do a Medal Monday. So it doesn't have to be a medal, but what are you proud of? This gets sent out every Monday at 9 a.m. and people can chime in with, I did this race over the weekend and I got this medal. This is actually someone on our team. Sharing pictures, and it's just a recurring message that people can ignore or they can add color to it if they have something to say. So I love automatic check-ins for this kind of example. And then chat, again, like Ashley has, just casual conversation that does not need to be documented or saved in any way. So just a back and forth conversation. Oh, it looks like Liza is typing something to us right now. So that's just casual conversation. Perfect. Love that. And then I did a resources guide, which is really docs and files, a member directory, all fake information. Jethro, I used your AI tip to create all of this. So a place where it can easily be edited, someone can add to it, everything in one place. And then I also did a discounts page if your group has any sort of thing like that, where you just need those resources all in one place. And then I also linked out to some educational tools, podcasts, a YouTube channel, anything where you want people to just find it in one place for your club, whatever that might be. Basecamp is great for that. That's my example.
Solid, Kimberly. It really is.
Thank you. Okay. I'm going to jump to questions if there are any. There's one from Chris, which we answered earlier. Yes, this will be recorded. The link that you joined is the same link. This recording will be literally moments after we hang up. So that is your answer to that. I'm going to go to Nicoletta's question. Let's see. And Ashley, this might be a question for you. If I created my free account in the past with 3 projects, will 2 of them be deleted with the new pricing?
No.
Will the lineup disappear? Thank you. So I think Nicoletta might be asking about our free account. So we just launched last month a free Basecamp account where you get 1 project. And you can use that project. Once you're done with it, you can archive it and you can start a new one, but it's only 1 project working simultaneously. So I think Nicoletta, Ashley, jump in if I get this wrong. If you're talking about the free account, it would be a completely separate account that only has 1 project. It is not connected to any current project that you have with the 3 projects on it.
Yeah. So if you used a free account years and years ago, which did have a 3 project limit, that's very different from whatever's happening now. So we won't automatically switch you to any kind of plan. That just stays as it is forever. So I don't know why you would want to get rid of that plan and move to this one. But what you could do is make an additional account, and that'll be the new details, the new single project plan. And either way, lineup stays.
Yeah. So the free plan also would work well. I imagine someone who is not maybe the account owner, but uses Basecamp with their company. Like they don't have their own account. They use Basecamp day in and day out with their company, but wants to start something on their own. Like you could spin up a free, completely free one project Basecamp plan that would be separate from your business plan.
Yes. And that there was a question that it's not live, but it happened
Yes.
earlier. So let me start answering this one.
Great question.
To switch between your account, you either, most of the time, you will just look for that Basecamp logo, like if you're on your computer, on the top left-hand side. Anyone, I can also share my screen to do this too, but you click on that logo and that's how you see any other account that you are a part of. So you just click between them really easily. Someone had also asked, there was also a question about when the email addresses are separate, right? So that our system only knows when you have one email address. If you have 8 other email addresses like I do, it doesn't take mind of any of them. So you'll need to make sure that your one email address is the one that has access to multiple accounts. If you ever have trouble with that, that's one of my favorite things to do, is to make everything nice and neat under one email address. So right into support@basecamp.com, click on the question mark on the bottom right-hand side of the page. That'll get you to the same folks. So that'll be the way to do it. Otherwise, you'll have to log in and log out, or maybe use 2 separate browsers. But someone had also asked about the app, the Android app and also the iOS app. There is a way when you're logged in with one email address to switch between your accounts. You basically just get to where it says your account name, and then that's what you click on so that it shows all your other options. There are detailed instructions in our support pages as well.
Can I share a little something about that also?
Of course.
Absolutely.
So I mentioned I'm working on my doctorate. I have an email address from my university, and I want to send emails from that account into Basecamp. So I created that person as another person. I never log in with that account, but I always forward emails into that doctoral account into that project, so that I can see those email forwards come in. But then that's the only project that email address has access to. And that's a sneaky little way of just adding in a way to keep that communication open, but it's all tied to my main Basecamp account email.
Jethro, I have done something very similar. Before I started working here, I had my own business and used Basecamp. And when I started at 37 Signals, they were obviously 2 different email addresses. But I'm like, if I ever want to go back and look at something to reference for someone else, it'd be nice to have access to it. So I basically invited my 37 Signals email address to that account so I can at least see everything, interact with it if I wanted to. But the account owners are 2 different email addresses. Okay, I'm going to answer this question. Let me move it over from Chris, who is here with us live, which is, are there plans for a Hey Basecamp integration? I don't actually think we have answers for you, Chris.
No. So Jethro knows well that part of the way that 37 Signals works is that we work in 6-week cycles, and that's as far as we go. That's as far as we dare go, because everything changes all the time. That's the one reliable thing. And so does what the market needs. So does what we need internally. So it's hard for us to be able to plan out within the next year and a half, Basecamp and Hey will be merged in some way, shape, or form. We just literally don't know. So those kinds of things will be announced as we make progress on them. So
yeah,
perhaps one day.
Maybe. We don't know. I'm going to go to Jacob's question, which is, does Basecamp have template projects? We do. The answer is yes. Ashley, do you want to share your screen and show where you can get to that? Do you mind?
Yeah, I'm interpreting that question differently. So
do we have templates?
Right.
How are you interpreting?
As in
pre-made templates.
Right. Do you have a triathlon club template? I do not. So
I don't.
I'll try triathlon clubs. All projects are all project templates are done by scratch. They're done however you want them to be done. So when you go to make a project template, this will all be blank. When you start a new template, there's nothing to kind of start you off on. It is always a blank slate. But here's my club template. Maybe you're a part of several. You might. And then you know kind of what works and what doesn't work for you, or you're willing to try it out. The other thing is that there are people in the Basecamp community, and Jethro, I'm working on putting his project into the Basecamp community now so that you can all look at it. And since we can't copy it into your account yet in some way, then you can at least have that model for you. There's a couple other in there of like how you would start someone off in a Basecamp account for business, how you would use your Basecamp account for, all these different kinds of examples exist there. So there is a way to just kind of mimic it, but it's going to have to be manual clicking. But once you've done this, you're done, and you can just start any new project from this template that you create.
Chris, I'm sorry. I thought you meant, do we have templates? Got really excited to say yes to you.
We do have to-do list templates as well. So if you also just tend to favor to-do lists, maybe even over a project template, like if you are using the free plan and you're kind of in that one space, maybe you make multiple to-do tools. One of them is one area of your life, book club, and the other one is something else and something else. And that's how you can maybe start to use to-do list templates so that you're not repeating the same information over and over again every time your book club to-do tool has a new book.
All right.
Yeah.
Can I answer something like that too?
Absolutely.
So I have these production services where I create podcasts for people, and I go through the same process every time. I have, if you remember on my screen, I have 12 projects in there. They're all the same project template. I made the first one, and then I just saved it as a template. And then each time I do a new one, then I just recreate that template and using that, save as a project template. And then as I adjust it and change it, then I just do the latest version. I just save that as that project template and just basically overwrite it so that as I make changes, I don't have to go back in and edit the template again. I just save the new one as part of that.
Love that. Okay, I am going to, on the screen, Ashley mentioned the Basecamp community, which she heads up. That's where we found Jethro. He's one of more than 1,000 people who are part of that Basecamp group. If you are a Basecamp user and are interested, let me pop that up on the screen. Just below us, there is a button to learn and join the Basecamp community. And we'd love to have you over there. I know people are always sharing their tips and tricks and best practices. So it is a great place to learn more about Basecamp from other people who are using it. Mm-hmm. If we didn't get to your question, either you wrote it in earlier or you posted it today, we will follow up with you separately. I know there's a support related question in there, so we'll get our support team to answer that directly. You guys, this has been a delight. Thank you for joining us, and we will see you guys next time. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye for now.